this episode of the Maverick Paradox podcast, I'm joined by Jeff Hancher, a leadership coach whose journey from poverty to corporate success is a powerful story of resilience, purpose, and people who made a difference. We explore how great leaders give feedback without fear, hold others accountable with care, and avoid the traps of aggression or passivity. If you're ready to lead with clarity and courage, this conversation will show you how. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, the show for business owners, organisational leaders, and the pathologically curious. I'm Judith Germain, a Maverick leadership expert exploring what it really takes to lead in a world that doesn't always make sense. If you're ready to think differently, challenge the status quo, navigate complexity, and drive real impact, you're in the right place.
I'm telling you that because there was a leader in my life that stepped in at a moment that had he not done what he did, I don't know if I go on to have the same level of success that I've had. And my challenge to every leader listening is this. There might be a young Jeff Hancher that is waiting on you to show up and earn the right to have a tough conversation that could literally change the course of their life.
And today our guest is Jeff Hancher. How are you doing, Jeff?
I am well, Judith. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
You're welcome. You look like someone that laughs a lot.
Oh, man. Life is so good. I have no complaints here. I'm so thankful I'm not where I used to be, but I'm still a little bit blissfully discontent that I want more. So enjoying the ride and enjoying serving people. So a lot to smile about.
Tell us a bit about you then.
Yeah, so what a journey my life has been, and hopefully this encourages some people. But I grew up in gross poverty. I had two parents that really never worked a day in my life. My mom battled a disease called lupus. My dad battled chronic osteoarthritis. This led to a lot of bad decisions. Their health was very poor. My brother and I, as teenagers, didn't have a lot of direction. This led to him and I making a lot of bad decisions and, hanging around the wrong people, getting into trouble. When I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted more, but I didn't know what to do. And so I joined the United States Army and spent time in the military and transitioned, was going to go to college, go to university, and try to better myself. And just before I was ready to begin my academic efforts, my dad made me aware that they were sending my mom home to die from the hospital. And at that same time, my dad was having a leg amputated because of serious infection. And so it was a really, really trying time for our family. And I certainly went and supported them and got the nurses set up. And thankfully, mom recovered. That was the story for her many times. But during that season, Judith, where my family was suffering, both of my parents were struggling through very serious health conditions, I just decided I was going to get a seasonal job just to help them pay some bills. And so I applied to be a truck driver at a company called Cintas Uniform Company. And I basically, my job was to drive around and pick up dirty clothes in the Pittsburgh area from Pennsylvania. And what I thought was going to be a seasonal job ended up being almost a 25-year career in that Fortune 500 company. And it provided a life for me that I could have never dreamed of. And I'd love to tell you that, 10 promotions and becoming a senior leader in a Fortune 500 company was because I was amazing. But the reality is I had so many amazing leaders that pulled out my potential and had belief in me more than I had in myself. And when I got to a place of leadership and then senior leadership, I decided I wanted to commit my life to doing that for others. And so much so that in 2019, I left the company that I loved and started my own company to serve leaders every day of my life. And now I get to do that all over the world. And so that's kind of the short version of the life story of Jeff Hancher, but a lot of twists and turns in between all of that as well.
I bet that's so interesting. It's quite interesting that you had so many good leaders. Because one of the reasons I wrote my book was because I wasn't around many good leaders. So
Mm,
that's really heartwarming to know about.
yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um,
I had some bad ones too. And you know this as well as I do, Judith. Sometimes you can learn more from a bad leader than a
yeah,
good one because you learn what not to do, right?
exactly. In my very early days of working, I had a particularly bad manager. And for a while, that used to stress me out. And then I thought, that's not getting me anywhere, right? Just getting stressed over this
Right.
bad manager. So then I used him as like a lab rat. So he became like the experiment. So I would watch him and I'd take notes of like the effects of him doing stuff. So he would speak to somebody in a certain way, and then there'd be ripple effect, and I would learn from that. I'd like go, that's interesting, and I would actually so I learned an awful lot, but I made him my study, and whilst
Yeah.
doing that, I was no longer upset by him. It was almost an excitement to see what else I was going to get. Do you know, like,
That's great perspective. I love it. That's great perspective.
yeah, so it made it a lot. So I say that to people as well now is that these to say there's always something you can take
That's
from one.
absolutely. You can learn from failure. You can learn from success. You can learn from a bad leader. You can learn from a good leader.
Yeah,
There's learning opportunity everywhere we go. You know, I tell people all the time, wisdom really comes from a couple of different things. It comes from failing and learning, or
yeah,
getting around others that have failed and learn from them.
yes,
Obviously,
yep.
learning from others that have failed is less painful, which is the power of mentorship.
Mm.
That wisdom that great mentors have, it comes from experience, and a lot of those experiences are setbacks and adversity that we can learn so much from.
I agree. I do a lot of culture work. And one of the things I notice when you first enter an organization is it's quite common for people to be scared of having critical conversations with people,
Yeah.
even though you need to have those conversations to grow and to change. How can you, in your perspective, how do you think you can get a winning culture by having those conversations, or is it not possible?
It is absolutely possible, and we've seen it time and time again. And I've been a consultant now for 5 years. And
Yeah,
typically, when I get called in, like you, Judith, it's things are bad, the culture's toxic, turnover is high, and you get to be a part of rebuilding culture. But I will tell you, at the foundation of healthy culture is healthy leadership. It's impossible to have a healthy culture without healthy leadership. When you go a layer under that, it's impossible to have healthy leadership without healthy feedback, especially the tough conversations. What we know is that if we were to look at the four leaders that have made the biggest impact on our life, well, whether that's you, Judith, or anybody listening into this show, if you were to think of four leaders in your life that you would say, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be who I am. I have a question, which is this: were they hard on you? Were they tough on you? The answer is always yes. They were tough
mm,
on me. But did they care? Yes, they cared. I knew they cared, but my goodness, were they so tough on me? So what we know is it's absolutely possible, and it's those leaders that have the biggest impact on us. The challenge is a lot of leaders think they do this well, but in reality, they don't. I think they do it well because it's their intention to do it well. But there was a Gallup poll that came out recently that told us that 65% of leaders strongly agree that they give effective feedback. But when their subordinates were given the same poll and asked the same question, only 21% of them believed that they received any meaningful feedback in the last 7 days. And so we have a gap here of what leaders think is happening and going well, and what is actually happening and going well. So at the root of great culture, and even more than that, at the root of helping people reach their fullest potential is firm feedback. It's the tough conversations. The key is earning the right to have those conversations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Literally last week, I was training a group of individuals on how to have a feedback culture, like a good feedback culture.
Mm.
And this was for a company that is based abroad, and they said, "But we do good feedback because we do it once a year." And I was like, "This is not I'm not talking about appraisals. I'm talking
Nope.
about the feedback you give all." And that's the problem, is that I think institutions give something a name and then it makes it small. So in that, and it was a, it's not a toxic environment at all, that particular company. But the
Sure.
idea of feedback had become so small that it's something that you only give once a year,
Yeah.
or luckily enough, maybe twice a year. And the idea that feedback is something that happens constantly all the time, I had to really extend out to give examples of, the feedback is the conversations that you have on the way back to your desk when you mention, for them to even begin to kind of understand how you do it properly. We had to open the conversation as to, like, what is feedback?
Yes. Yeah.
So
It's
that,
so important. And you're right. The frequent feedback. I tell companies all the time, Judith, if you're only giving annual performance reviews and that is your method of feedback, I would recommend stop doing that altogether, because employees are turned off by that. They're getting 12 months worth of information in a 1 hour time slot. It's almost offensive. It is offensive to people. And this
mm,
cadence of frequent feedback that you're talking about is one of the things that has to happen. Because
yeah,
in this cadence of frequent feedback, what we're giving them is time, and what we're giving them is deposits. What I hear all the time when I go into, try to dissect where is the culture issues, one of the questions I always ask is every employee in your company getting a routine one-on-one debrief with their leader? And I mean every employee, from the lowest paid to the highest paid. And the answer is almost always no. When I ask why is this not happening? The answer is always the same. We
not
don't
enough
have
time.
time. We
Yes,
don't
that's exactly what I
we
heard
don't have
last
time
week.
for
Yeah,
that. But the reality is it's an investment of time. You can't afford not to do this.
yeah,
It is the biggest return on investment of time that a leader has, because in these debriefs, in these meetings, we're running a framework consistently. And I talk about this in the book, Firm Feedback, of setting clear and reasonable expectations, adequately training people to at least meet the expectation. But then once those expectations are set, they're fair and reasonable, the employee understands why the expectation is good for them, then we've earned the right to give feedback. Now we get into this: who's sitting in front of me? Are they
yeah.
a peak performer? Are they high tenure? Are they low tenure? What kind of feedback is warranted here to help them get to the end goal? But here's what we know about people: not everybody is going to do it the right way. Not everybody is a culture fit. Not everybody is bringing the same type of effort. That's where accountability, the third piece of this framework, comes into play, is the accountability, which is the tough conversation. Accountability nobody really enjoys. But what we know about the best leaders is that when they deliver accountability, it's not seen as harsh and cruel. It's
No,
seen as a gift. The goal is not to be a boss people report to. The goal is to be a leader that people don't want to let down. And when you
yeah.
hit these three in sync, we become a leader that can give a gift of firm feedback.
You know what? I think what you've said there, being a leader that people don't want to let down, is really the key.
Yeah.
And when you sort of said people don't like accountability, I always liked accountability because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was accountability is something that no one can make you have. You you choose to be accountable or not, and
Right.
that's the bit people miss, isn't it? So if people want to be held accountable, they're actually owning the issue. They're owning the I will get this done. They're not
That's
looking at the
good.
job spec and saying, "Well, I'll do that."
That's
Uh,
so true.
yeah,
So true.
and I think if feedback is normal, if you have a culture where feedback is normal, then there's no negative weight to it. It makes you more of a learning organisation. And in
Yeah,
fact, people will seek it. People will seek feedback.
it's true. Yeah, because I believe that, Judith, and I believe in the heart of every person is a person that wants to do better.
Yeah.
And I believe in the heart of every leader is a leader that wants people to reach their fullest potential. The key is, these tough conversations, there are ways to go about earning the right. And I do believe that you said it, which some people listening might not believe it, but it's true, is that everybody wants to be accountable. We all want that. Our kids want that. Our employees want that. We want that. Everybody wants that because we know there has to be healthy boundaries, and accountability helps us grow. It helps us become better. I mean, think about this. And Judith, I'm sure you're a good sport. We can maybe do a quick role play with the listener. Let's just say that you and I, we're going to go to an international business convention, and you and I, we're going to have a booth set up there so that we can greet people and tell them about our companies and our services. And you and I, we're having a meeting about our strategy for this big business convention, how we're going to look, how we're going to show up, our elevator pitches. And I say to you, Judith, when we're walking into that business convention in a couple weeks, if I saw anything that didn't represent your goals and what you were trying to accomplish, like say, for example, you drank too much coffee and maybe your breath didn't smell fresh, would you want me to let you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And I say, I'm committed to doing that for you, Judith, because I know how important your personal brand is. I know how passionate you are about helping other people, and I wouldn't want anything to get in the way of that. So if I do happen to smell that your breath isn't minty fresh, I'm committed to letting you know. Now, you and I, we get out of the car in 2 weeks, we're walking into the business convention, and I happen to smell a lot of coffee on your breath. And I pull a mint out of my pocket, and I say, Judith, a couple weeks ago, you asked me to let you know. And I have some mints, and I think these are going to help. And I hand you a mint. What do you say to me when I hand you the mint?
Me, I would say thanks.
Thank you.
In fact,
That's what everybody would say. Thank you so
it made
much
me
for looking
smile.
out.
That
Yeah.
scenario made me smile because I'm thinking, oh, you came prepared.
Yes.
There's a
And
bigger
now,
problem here than this one meeting. That's what my brain thought.
now I'm giving you a gift
Yeah.
that is maybe a hard thing to say to somebody. Because look at this other scenario. This other scenario is you and I are in a store and you're behind me in line. We're just buying a snack for lunch or whatever. We've never met before. And I smell coffee breath because you're standing right behind me in line. And I turn around and I say to you, ma'am, your breath stinks. Now, in that scenario, you're offended. You're hurt. Who are you to tell me that I have bad breath? I've never even met you before. How dare you? Now, check this out. The information's exactly the same. The scenario of us going into the business convention and you standing behind me in a lunch line, the data is the same, which is your breath isn't minty fresh. It's offensive. In one scenario, I've earned the right to tell you, and you say thank you to me. In the other scenario, I haven't earned the right to tell you, and you're offended and you're put off. The goal of a leader is not to be right, because in the scenario of the lunch line, not knowing you, I'm right. Your breath is offensive, but I haven't earned the right to tell you. The goal of a leader is not to be right. It's to be effective. And by the way, Judith always has minty fresh breath, just for the listener. That's just a role play. We're faking this. She is on point every single day. But you get my point here of earning the right through time, through conversation. This is how we slowly become a leader that people don't want to let down, because we're making deposits that earn us the right to make the withdrawals, even in the hard conversations.
Yeah, I like that. I think though there's another side of it. So I think that everyone's a leader, right? Well, because the first person you lead is yourself. So we're all leaders. And I
Yeah.
think there's something about being able to receive feedback. So like I was saying in a training course last week was everybody always says I can handle constructive feedback. Well, hey, not all the feedback you're going to get is going to be constructive because unfortunately there's leaders that don't know what they're doing, right? So you
Isn't that
have
true?
to listen. So what is regardless of how the message is delivered, is the feedback something that you should be doing or not? So
Yeah. See that?
you have to like take out your ego and go, right, like with the breath thing might be, yes, I am super embarrassed now. Everyone's looking at me. But at the end of the day, she has actually told me something that's quite valuable. I need to do something about it. So
Yeah.
and I think there's a maturity as a leader when you can hear something that's unpalatable in an offensive way and still take out the nugget. And the nugget might be, this is all about that individual, so therefore I'm ignoring this feedback, whatever it is. Or it might be, yeah, okay, they said it to hurt me or embarrass me or whatever. But
Mhm.
essentially there's truth in there. So I need to do something about it. And that takes maturity to stand up and actually make the choice to do something despite being offended or picked on or bullied or whatever. But there's something
So
else I
true.
want to ask you.
Yeah.
Your book title. So firm feedback would be just like meh. But the fact that you've put it in a fragile world, I'm like, yeah. Now I'm interested because the
Hmm.
world is fragile.
Mm.
Because unfortunately, I think that the whole idea about critical reasoning and leading without ego and all this sort of stuff is under threat. So people become overly fragile. And I don't mean neurodiverse people that have different sensibility for whatever reasons. I just mean that people generally get upset over things that once upon a time you would never be upset about because it's like you said, the breath thing. Um,
Hmm.
so how do you give firm feedback when we're in situations where there's fragility, brittleness in the organization?
Yeah. Well, there is no question about it. It's fragile. It's a tough time to lead, but I will tell you, the tougher it is to lead, the bigger the opportunity for leaders, healthy leaders,
Mm,
to make
mm,
the biggest impact. This fragile world that we're in, we've seen political tensions that are brewing all over the world. We have economic tensions that are brewing all over the world, whether it's tariffs or wars. We have social silos that are being built online that is causing a lot of people to not have confidence or to be insecure. Uh, People are worried that conflict of feedback is going to cause more division or hurt relationships.
yeah.
No, and then look, let's not forget about the Great Resignation. It's harder to fill jobs than ever before. Turnover is higher than ever before. This "you only live once" mentality is very vibrant, and people are quitting in higher droves than ever. So leaders are having a very hard time keeping top talent and attracting top talent. And then you add quiet quitting, which I'm sure we've all heard of. This is
Mm,
where the employee keeps showing up for a paycheck, but is doing as minimal as possible. Quiet quitting is costing the global economy upwards of $9 trillion every single year. And so we are in a fragile world. And what's happening because of this fragility is that leaders are less confident to give firm feedback because they just don't want to rock the boat. And this is causing feedback avoidance. And there's a root to why there is feedback avoidance. In the book, I talk about the acronym FEAR. And you hit on some of this with the emotion and so forth. But the fear, the F is fallout. A lot of leaders, they're afraid of ruining their leadership reputation as a nice, cool boss. I want to be liked. And so they're afraid there might be some fallout. The E is emotion. What if I give this feedback and they cry? What if I give this feedback and they get angry or throw a chair or clench their fist? You know, they're not just worried about seeing the emotion, about their ability to handle this display of emotion that sometimes comes from firm feedback. Listen, I've seen it all. I've had people cry. I've had people get angry. If you haven't had somebody cry yet, you might not be doing it right. But then you have the A that's amateur. We hear this time and time again in our workshops when we teach this framework that nobody's ever told me this before. A lot of leaders, they don't have training in this. They've been thrust into a leadership title. They don't have experience. A lot of leaders feel unequipped to give firm feedback, especially low tenured leaders. They don't want to make a mistake, so they avoid tough conversations altogether. And then the R is retaliation. A lot of leaders are afraid, man, if I get this wrong, that employee, that person on my team, they might tell my boss, or they might tell legal, or they might tell human resources. And they're not confident enough to lean into the tough conversation in fear of retaliation. The antidote to fear, FEAR, is to understand the framework so that it becomes healthy. And again, expectations, feedback, and accountability. And this feedback thing, it's important to realize that all feedback's not the same. In the book, we outline the different types of feedback, when to use collaborative feedback, when to use supportive feedback, when to use directive feedback. Not any two people are created the same. When a leader at least has an understanding that feedback should be viewed as tools in a tool belt, and they at least understand what each tool does, they're going to be better equipped to pull the right feedback out at the right moment to have the best impact that they can. And I think that is the framework to get leaders confident so that they can lean into these tough conversations.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's listen to a quick advert. You can't lead what you don't influence. The Influence Blueprint reveals how your leadership is really landing and what's silently undermining your impact. Whether you're a leader ready to level up or an HR director tired of investing in development that doesn't stick, this is where influence gets real. Find out more at maverickparadox.co.uk/influence-blueprint. Welcome back to the Maverick Paradox. This is the podcast for the pathologically curious. From my perspective, is all feedback is driving towards behavioural change.
Yes.
And you can't change behaviour if what you're doing is not contextualised. You don't care about the individual, and you're not seeking to align. So we can do small behavioural change. You know, we can beat people up, we can bully them, we can threaten them, and they will change their behaviour. But it's not permanent behavioural change, and it does come with consequences. But it appears to be effective because the behaviour changes fast.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people use this coercive kind of leadership style, because it appears to work. But what they don't see is the ripple effects. You don't see the quiet quitting. You don't see the cost elsewhere, turnover, absence, all those kind of things. And I think feedback avoidance is in fact feedback. You know, feedback of a different type, right? So you're signaling quite loudly what type of leader you are. You are providing feedbacks to others.
That's profound.
It is though, isn't it? You sit there and think, okay, all right. The other thing that you mentioned I thought was interesting was training. I think it's interesting because we both deliver training on feedback. But it always surprises me that, like what you say, people become leaders, but they don't seek to self-study. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, right now I'm a leader, the organisation is going to give me everything I need now to grow and develop. And organisations can't. It's just not possible to give everything that you need. But where's the I don't know if that's a Generation X thing, but where's the self-motivation to go, okay. So like, you know, like when I became a leader very young, and I went off I was unusual in the sense that I didn't go, let's read some leadership books per se to start off with. I went, how do I change behavior? How do I um influence people? And I went down the route of psychology and transactional
Mm,
analysis and all that before I hit leadership books because I wanted to see what made people move.
that's great.
Um, and then coming across John Maxwell, which we was talking earlier, and he
Mhm,
completely turned me around. I think I always remember reading his book where he said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, and
mm,
that was like that's it, that's it, that's it. It's
that
like,
is
you
it.
know, it was complete change. And I think that if we see leadership as influence, when we do things like give feedback, we're really saying, how can I influence this person to do something different?
That's
Not
right.
manipulate, because that's easy. Grab a
Yeah.
2-year-old and they'll show you a masterclass on manipulation. Um,
Mhm,
you influence takes more care and
mhm,
it's more, you're looking at the individual. So
mhm.
so you're also looking at society and you're looking at yourself. It's like three dimensions to the influence, isn't it? Whereas manipulation is only one dimensional, isn't it? It's like, give me what I want.
Yes.
The influence is like, how can I give you what you want
Right.
whilst I'm also benefiting and I'm not hurting society? So influence
Yes.
is much more complicated,
It is.
takes more time, but
Mhm,
after a while it becomes what you do and then it takes no time. It's like no time at all because you just
mhm,
do stuff. And you said earlier as well about people don't want to give feedback because it costs more time. And I
mhm.
said, but you're spending 80 to 90% of your time dealing with all the issues, people
That's right.
issues that are caused by you having no time to say, I don't like this or I don't like
That's
this.
right.
It's
Yeah, you're
just
gonna spend
crazy.
time one way or the other.
So it sounds good. So
Yeah.
when you say firm feedback, is firm an acronym? What do you mean by firm feedback?
No, firm is what it is. Firm is different than abrasive. You know,
Oh, I gotcha.
firm is also different than passive. You talked about that leader a few minutes ago that is just really aggressive,
Yeah.
and the fear with that is, or why this happens is they can get results,
Yep.
by being a dominating leader, by being swing the big stick and beat people into submission. The problem with that is that really all you're getting is compliance.
Hmm.
You're not
For
getting
a period of time.
engagement.
Yeah, and it's not
And
even that sustainable.
it's not sustainable at all. But then on the other side of the aggressive leader is the passive leader. And the passive leader is the leader that everybody loves. This passive leader, they celebrate every birthday. They have ice cream socials on Friday. People just love them. It's important to them that they're liked. The problem with the passive leader is they're not great at accountability. And so people like them, but they don't respect them. Right in the middle is the leader that's assertive, and they carry a firmness about them. They're not hurting people, beating them into submission, and they're not pushovers. Right in the middle is firm. And it would be like a speed limit sign.
Hmm.
You can't put a speed limit sign up and never give anybody a speeding fine or a ticket. There has to be accountability. The passive leader, they'll put up this speed limit sign and tell you how fast you're allowed to drive, but they'll never give you a speeding ticket. Adversely, you have the aggressive leader. They won't even put up a speed limit sign. They'll just start giving you tickets. And everybody's wondering, like, what is going on? Did you even know what the speed limit was? I just got punished for something I didn't even know was a standard. But the firm
Mhm.
leader, they'll put up a sign, a speed limit sign, and they'll tell you why it's there. They'll tell you why it's good for you. And they'll put up multiple speed limit signs down the road so that you don't forget. And the feedback is given to you ad nauseum and frequently. And when you do go over the speed limit, they will pull your car over. They will tell you what the standard is. They'll remind you of the standard. They'll remind you of where you fell short, and they will give you a fine. They will give you a speeding ticket, and they will remind you why the speed limit is what it is and why it's good for you, and they'll reset the expectation. That's a firm leader. If you're going to set expectations without accountability, you're going to be taken advantage of. If you're not setting expectations, but you're holding people accountable, you're a monster. You'll get compliance, but you'll never get engagement. It's right in the middle that the healthiest leaders live. And that is where we're trying to help leaders most, is to be that effective, firm leader.
Makes sense. I would just like, if I may, add a little nuance, which I think is implied anyway, but I just want to make it from my perspective. So that firm leader, if they are doing everything that you've said, 100%, but doing it from a coaching perspective, they'll get engagement and alignment faster. So rather than saying, you've gone over the thing and you've gone over the thing, I've told you not to go over the thing, here's your ticket. It'll be, do you understand what it is? Why did you go over? So you're taking a more coaching approach. So they are actually buying into it because they are part of the conversation. So they're not passively receiving the fine or whatever. They're actually accepting it because they're part of that journey. Yes, I remember you did tell me before. And the other thing as well, I think that firm leader would have provided training. And beforehand, like, this is why we're doing it. Are you all on board? Do you understand why you're on board? I think and I think it's implied in what you're saying anyway. But I just wanted to soften it a little bit by because I think otherwise people can make that distinction between tough love and love. So because you said before, isn't it, that people think that they're doing it well, and that's because they're saying to themselves, well, it's tough love, isn't it? But their version of tough love is to beat you up, like you were saying just now. Whereas that firm leader is just loving. I'm doing it because this is an act of love. You know, and I know that
so true.
Don't like the idea of love, but and it's not love in a soppy way. It's like, I care so much about you. I want to make sure you don't crash your car and die.
Yeah.
This is why I've got this sign up.
That's exactly it.
The other signs before you hit the one, because the last one, the junction.
Yes.
Let's just make sure you don't hit the junction there by having some amber lights on the way through. Whereas he said the tough love guy is like, well, I'm going to say nothing, and then he's going to crash, and then I'm going to say, well, there is a speed limit. You're not seeing the sign.
That's right. That's so true. It makes me think of one of my first leaders that I had at the corporate company I worked for 25 years. I was a truck driver, an entry-level person. I wanted to be in outside sales. I saw these outside salespeople. They dressed in nice suits and they drove nice cars, and I wanted to be like them. And so I finally get my chance to be in outside sales, and I wasn't really that great at it, but I was willing to work hard. And I had a leader, his name was Sean, who he kind of knew about my background a little bit. He knew I didn't come, from a lot given my family dynamic, but he believed in me. And this is a guy that, he would pull me into his office and teach me sales scripts and teach me how to overcome an objection, even at the end of a workday. He would jump in my car and go on sales calls with me and give me coaching and feedback after sales calls. He would run some sales calls so I could observe him doing it. And he would go above and beyond in so many ways. I remember him taking me into the men's restroom and teaching me how to tie a knot in my necktie. He took me to a men's fashion store and taught me about men's business fashion. This is a guy that was making significant deposits in my life. And there was a morning, Judith, that I got a call from my dad that I got so many times, which was, you got to get to the hospital. Mom's not doing well. Well, here we had thought she was on the rebound. She was on the mend. She was getting through a tough time. And here it took a turn for the worse. And so I did what I always did, and I run to the hospital. And that day was different, Judith, because that day would be the last day that I would get to hold my mom and tell her that I love her. And she passes away. And I went into such a dark place of sadness and depression My attitude was poor. When I returned to work, I was a different person. I was lifeless. My results started to suffer. And this went on for weeks. And one day, my boss pulled me into the office and he said, listen, I've given you plenty of time to grieve. And your mom's passing breaks my heart. But I know why success is important to you. You have an 18-month-old son, and I can't continue to act the way that you're acting. And enough's enough. You have two choices. I'm going to give you 24 hours to make a decision. You can either come back to this team and you can be the person that I know that you have the potential to be, or you can't be on my team any longer. But I need you to decide. Judith, I will tell you, in that moment of anger, rebellion, depression, the old Jeff Hancher would have probably quit that job and told that guy, who are you to tell me what to do? This is the worst moment of my life. But because Sean had done all the training that he did with me, worked so hard to make me better, went above and beyond a professional sense and made it personal by teaching me how to dress as a professional, I knew the hard feedback he was giving me in that moment, it was because he cared. Now, from that moment, I went on to win numerous sales awards. I was promoted 10 more times. Now I have a business that touches the entire globe of the earth. I don't tell you all that to tell you I'm something special. I'm telling you that because there was a leader in my life that stepped in at a moment that, had he not done what he did, I don't know if I go on to have the same level of success that I've had. And my challenge to every leader listening is this: there might be a young Jeff Hancher that is waiting on you to show up and earn the right to have a tough conversation that could literally change the course of their life. And so what you're saying about doing the extra things, Judith, it's so true and it's so impactful that it can transcend business results. It can literally transform somebody's generation.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And it's a great story because it shows you this is what people miss when they say they don't have the time.
Yeah.
And he spent that time helping you and you got the direct benefit. But for everybody else who's observing him helping you, they also get the benefit.
That's right.
And that's what adds into the culture. So
That's
it's,
right.
That guy's act of love
Yeah.
completely changed your life. And what I thought was quite interesting as well is that he knew the right timing. So he would waited 3 days afterwards, his
Yeah.
instant result. He gave you the space to find yourself. And then when he thought you need to be picked up, that was when he did it. And he could only pick the right time because he actually took the time to know you.
That's right. So well said.
And it doesn't matter how big your department is, you can still get to know people. And I think that's one of the dangers of a really flat organization where you've got major companies going, oh, we've got rid of 6,000 middle managers because we don't need them. Completely forgetting that whilst you still have employees in an organization, you need that one-on-one touch.
Yeah.
Because of all these things that you've mentioned. And I think that's probably the saddest thing is that we think we don't need levels of management. I mean, we don't need like millions of levels of management, but we need people who can touch another person.
It's so true. It's impactful, isn't it?
Yeah. I think if everybody sat down and thought about the managers that made the difference in their lives, it would be the ones that gave you the hard feedback, the
No
ones
doubt.
that, pushed you out of the nest when you weren't quite ready, the ones that picked you up when you completely screwed up,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. Because we all go through that, but it's just unfortunate that there are so many people who don't have somebody who's watching over them. And that's part of the brief, isn't it, of a leader, of a manager, is to watch over your charges.
That's right. That's absolutely right. It's a high calling, isn't it?
It is. It's a fun one too. You know
Yes.
what? This has been such a fun conversation, Jeff. I
I
think you should
loved it.
come back another time and have some more
Man, I
conversation
will.
with
I
me.
love your heart for leadership, Judith, and obviously those that are listening to the show, they could listen to any show, but they're investing in their leadership, and I'm grateful for everybody listening and your heart to develop leaders and support leaders. I share that heart, so certainly, if I can ever serve you or your listeners in any way, I would love the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
You bet. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you out there for listening to the Maverick Paradox podcast. I'm your host, Judith Germain. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I create clear thinking and decisive leaders who can amplify their influence. Contact me to find out how I can help you or your organisation.